What do you do?
I play the orchestra. And you're a good musician. You sit right there. You're the best in your row.
Hello, and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we're talking about something that Deshaun's been pushing me to watch for a very long time.
For a good while.
For a good while. Like, definitely has been pushing me. And we're going to compare some movies here. We're going to see if they're the same but different. Same but different. All right, so what we're talking about is we're talking about the movie Steve Jobs. Not Jobs. Steve Jobs and The Social Network.
Yes.
Now, why are these two? Are we comparing these two movies?
Well, they're both biopics about tech moguls, more or less, if you had to use a descriptor. And they're both written by Aaron Sorkin. And they both have a lot of parallels as far as the way they portrayed these real people. As not as likable as you would like.
Of course. So I've seen Social Network a while ago. I'm a big David Fincher fan, so it was just like, yep, okay, yep, sure. I was like, Social Network, okay.
It actually took me a bit to watch The Social Network.
Yeah.
It was more just like, I like David Fincher, but what do I care about a Facebook movie?
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about the Steve Jobs movie.
Exactly. Everyone was just like, watch the movie.
Deshaun's been pushing me to watch this movie forever, Steve Jobs, and I've been like, I really don't care about Steve Jobs. Like, I get it. He's important, but I don't, like... I don't see how I would be interested. And then we finally sat down and watched it today. And I gotta say, I was wrong. Like, this is a movie that grabs you and doesn't let you go pretty much until the end. And which is so surprising. It's even I feel like it's got more teeth than Social Network, even though Social Network feels very like, oh yeah, like look at this like high-end tech mogul stuff, and look at how like, oh, Justin Timberlake characters cutting into Jesse Eisenberg's character. You're like, oh man, they're fighting each other. Jobs felt even more like everybody was just fighting each other the entire time. But basically, Deshaun pushed me to watch this movie, and we had to sit down to watch it today. And like right away, the movie just doesn't let go. Like, it starts off, and it just is like...
just pulls you by the ear, like, come along.
Yeah, they're like, hey, you're with... But that's the funny part. The come along bit is actually a huge part of what this movie is that you are literally a side character at the beginning of... like usually 10 to half an hour before a big press conference.
Yeah, big press reveal.
And like that's usually what the premise is for what's happening on screen. And you are basically like running around with Steve Jobs as he's running around before the press conference. And when you first hear that, you're going to be like, cool, a busy guy being busy. But the way you are just dragged into his personal life and how and the way people react to each other, it's astounding. Like it really comes down to the script. Like you said, Aaron Sorkin is a genius. Like,
yeah, he was the creator and showrunner behind The West Wing. He used to be a playwright at the beginning of his career. And he had written The Social Network. He's been in the business for a very long time. He's definitely like one of the top screenwriters known for his dialogue, especially.
Especially so.
What else has he done? He also did A Few Good Men, if you've ever seen that.
Oh,
yeah, that's him.
That's crazy. Yeah. This man knows how to do arguments. If A Few Good Men didn't show you already, he knows how to do arguments. And The Social Network didn't show you already. I feel like Steve Jobs is just argument after argument. Like, it is just continuous. If I had not just seen the Before trilogy, I would say this is some of the best argumenting I've ever seen on screen. Like, it
absolutely.
is just the way he's able to write. I think what really stands out to me for the argument scenes is the Steve Woz, Seth Rogen as Steve Woz, and Michael Fassbender as Steve Jobs arguing, and they're arguing at the same time together. There's a scene right before before the first launch, and he's saying like, please acknowledge it, and they're just outside like shooting the shit before, and just the way they're arguing at the same time, and they're obviously not listening to each other, but they are. Like,
they're just like trying to talk over each other.
Oh, I love that. Like, it just feels, first off, that's hard to do acting wise.
Oh, yeah.
Second off, it's hard to do editing dialogue wise, like not just writing it. I'm talking like literally cutting the sounds these people are making with their mouths and making it all work. It's astounding. I don't know. It was so.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, one of the things that drew me to this was I had watched Steve Jobs because, like, I sort of came from the same place. I'm like, oh, I mean, I know Steve Jobs. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But Danny Boyle is one of my favorite directors, and I love almost anything like Aaron Sorkin has written. So I'm just like, I love Danny Boyle. I love Aaron Sorkin. I love Michael Fassbender. Let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a shot.
And then I came out of it just like, damn.
Yeah, and that's how, and I feel like anybody who goes into this movie will feel that way. Like, even if you don't, like, I don't give, like, I think that's the number one important thing here to say. That's the best review of this movie. I don't give a shit about Steve Jobs. I came out being like, I might need to read more about Steve Jobs. Like, because I got invested. Like, not just a little bit, but like, literally... It's an extremely well-crafted film because you are only catching these moments in his life, but you still feel like there's these arcs that you are seeing in everybody.
And I think it was a good comparison for you to bring up the Before trilogy because I like just kind of dropping us in and we're able to catch up and get a sense of who these people are without having to telegraph it.
Right? Like, this is such a good movie because it's not... for a movie that's constantly expository, you don't feel like you are getting expository fucking anything.
Yeah.
You know, like it is.
It doesn't feel like a huge info dump.
No, it's really not. You know, like it tells you what it literally like works you into what's happening, and then it's able to play with what's happening in such a flawless way. And it really shows from every little bit that comes in, like from Waz to Lisa. Every little thing is these little moments that he's able to capitalize on.
Yeah, and everything feels organic and like they would necessarily happen. And even when it starts to feel a little too coincidental, even the movie itself addresses that later.
Exactly. I really like this movie's structure because it seems like a great way to cover a biopic. At the same time as being able to cover pretty much all the important things about Steve Jobs without having to be like, and this is exactly how Steve Jobs was born, raised, and here he is now.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is like, when you think of biopic, you expect like, and then Steve Jobs was born on the 4th of blank blank, you know, like.
And then maybe even like cover his death and stuff like that. But
this one does not.
I think
it's all about his life.
I think part of the advantage of that one, maybe not even advantage, but disadvantage that they had and having to work around it, is that we already had a biopic about Steve Jobs before this with Ashton Kutcher, and it's not good.
No, it's not.
And I imagine they kind of looked at that film and was just like, well, we can't do just like the standard one-to-one biopic. We're going to have to get creative with it. And so we had the cool structure of 3 separate press conferences in different decades.
And
all before
big
press
launches.
reveal.
Yeah, and I think that's a great little structure because it shows the important parts of somebody's life, which is what you'd want to show in a biopic anyways, but it's able to draw all the strings of his life into it without feeling like it's reaching for straws, you know? Like, I think that there's a lot of great biopics out there, but they feel like when they try to combine all their storylines, it feels like it's smashed together, you know, like obviously that wouldn't be happening at the same time as the other person, but this feels very natural and it feels like all of this would actually be happening, you know, like it's very realistic in that way. I think that the structure is also cool because it not only, you know when it's going to end, so it gives you this like this thriller feel of like you know you have 8 minutes, like, you know, like he's got to figure like he's got to somehow talk to his daughter and do all these things and like figure this all out all in this time, you know, like so it's like it's so well thought out, and not only is it like, oh yes, these are important moments in his life, but like it's a time critical moment of his life, you know, like because and he makes it so too, which is another part of the whole story, is that he can't be he can't be late, can't be late, and like, and that's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, like is saying he can't be late. It's funny because I do like The Social Network, but obviously it is not as well structured as this.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'll admit that I actually prefer Steve Jobs in a lot of ways because I love its
I can say it right here.
Yeah, I love its sense of structure. I love anything with like really intense, snappy dialogue. Dialogue's my favorite thing to write. So when I see something like this or the Before trilogy and it works so well, and me just imagining just the puzzle to work around to make it flow so well.
Oh my God, I don't even know what Andy Sorkin must do because I can't, like, they used to always say, read your dialogue back to yourself so it sounds right. And I'm like, is Andy Sorkin just sitting in his room being like, blah, 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 like yelling at himself?
He's just having like a Smeagol back and forth.
Yeah, like what the fuck is he on? Like, because his dialogue is snapping, you know, like it at points devastatingly so. Like so whip sharp that like you feel the hit when somebody's trying to hurt somebody, you know? Like in the second press conference when which we're obviously going to talk spoilers about these movies. I'm sorry, guys. These are a little bit older.
Yeah, they've both been out for a few years.
They've been out for a while, so yeah, and if it's about a real both of these are about real people, so how would they spoil anything? But like the second one with the, you know, he's gonna fuck up the launch, like you know he's gonna fuck up next, and you still. It's like he's able to like fight all these people and get this whip sharp dialogue, and then they're able to at that the scenes where he's the CEO, what's his name?
John Scully.
The scene with him and Scully is so devastating because they both know how to like take each other apart. And I think that's really what this whole film is that Steve Jobs thinks no one knows him, and then everybody he knows exactly how to like rip him to shreds, you know, like and it's like everybody does. It's wild. It's like for a man who's so like who tried to be private and like all these meetings are in closed rooms and like nobody can see it all until the end. It's all like it's devastating, you know, like these guys are just pulling each other apart. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's sorry.
You're absolutely right.
I'm getting a little turned up, but like,
this is like these emotions that you're feeling right now, Frank, is kind of me when I had first seen it, except I had no one to talk to about it. It's like I found, it's like, yeah, I know it was well received, but I felt like I discovered something that no one else was talking about. I'm just like, why isn't anyone talking about how good this movie is?
I think that's a good point. That I don't know why no one's talking to. First off, because I know we're talking about dialogue a lot, but you have to give it to these actors. Like, as much as I love a good dialogue, it also takes a great actor to deliver good dialogue, you know? And Michael Fassbender, like, who won the Oscar that year for this? Because they didn't deserve it.
He did. Well, I did remember who he lost
joking.
to.
Who did he lose to?
He did get nominated for Best Actor, and Kate Winslet did get nominated for Best Supporting Actress. I can't remember who she lost to, but he lost to DiCaprio for The Revenant.
Right, and it was his year.
Yeah.
You got to give it to him.
He lost to DiCaprio for The Revenant.
I take it all back. Leonardo deserves all the Oscars.
I can't be mad about that.
Can't be mad. But I really do feel like this is one of Fassbender's absolutely hands down best movies. And that's saying something because Fassbender is great in everything.
Yeah, he's got a track record.
He's got a track record of being great. I mean, he's in some shit movies. He's in Assassin's Creed. He's in the Iceman. Like, he's in some shit movies. Yeah. But here, he not only is like time passing and they're updating his makeup, but you believe it. You know, like they have these scenes where they have the older Steve Jobs and they cut back to like really young Steve Jobs, and it's still Fassbender, but you're like sitting there for a second being like, is that Fassbender? Like, you know, like you're like, you have to like kind of look back and forth because they did such a good job that looks like younger version of him. And the thing is, they didn't
even, as far as like makeup is concerned, didn't really do too much.
No.
But I think it's just a matter of like inhabiting it.
Yeah, and I think that's it, is that Fassbender's able to inhabit these different moments in his life and really bring this physicality to it too, because that's another important part about this, is that not only is Steve Jobs knows what he wants to say and how to say it, he also knows how to like move around people, and Fassbender really captures that, is the way he like touches people, talks to people. He really captures that.
Yeah.
And it's weird, you know?
It's an interesting contrast to see how, even beyond that, how both these films are directed compared to like Fincher.
Yeah, Fincher and Boyle.
Fincher.
That's a tough comparison because they are both realistic directors.
Yes.
If you look at their two films, sure, they have some fantastical elements in some, but they are very realistic directors. Like, I mean, 28 Days Later, yes, it's a zombie movie, but it's a pretty realistic zombie
even something
movie.
like Sunshine is pretty grounded, except for like maybe the third act.
And it's interesting look at these two because it's funny, Danny Boyle comes off, even though this is a very realistic film, he comes off as a more fantastical director, even just looking, if you're comparing these two movies.
Yeah,
because
just comparing them.
There's no, and I know Fincher has a style, and he's showing a style, but he's not fourth wall breaking with the style. You know, like he's just like, well, feel the mood, guys. We're all in this together. You know, like
Fincher is all about like tone and intensity.
Yes.
And Danny Boyle likes to play loose. He's definitely stylized, but he doesn't mind playing loose and playing a little fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's another point in Steve Jobs' favor. Is like I feel like I could rewatch Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
In fact, I have. Whereas The Social Network,
I've seen
it's
it.
one of those
I've
things.
seen it twice, though.
Yeah, The
I've
Social
seen
Network
Social
is a
Network
really
twice.
good movie.
It was
but
really
it's just
good.
one of those things. You're like, no, I have to be in the mood for The Social Network. But there's a lot of stuff about Steve Jobs. It's like I could rewatch this all the time.
No, I'm right there with you on that. I like it's almost like I wanted to watch. That was a really fast 2 hours. It was a 2-hour movie, and that was really fucking fast.
He's like, come on, guys, I could go for like 2 more copies.
Yeah, like
give me 2 more.
I thought there was going to be another one.
Yeah.
I really did. I was like at the end there. I was like, so they're doing the iPod next, right? Like I was like, because
I'm ready for it.
Let's go. And then they did it, and I was kind of like, oh, well, I would have liked that. And that's what's so great about it. It makes me want to go watch. It sounds stupid, but it makes me want to go watch The Newsroom. First off, because that same actor who played the CEO, is the main actor in Newsroom.
Yeah, it's escaping me right now. He's a great actor.
He's a
I
great
feel bad
actor.
that I've forgotten his name.
He's so good, and he's already so good in this movie. And I'm sure Aaron Sorkin writing a TV show with him behind it is gonna be fucking fantastic. You know, like I will get to Newsroom at some point.
I've seen a good chunk of Newsroom. Never watched all of it. I have seen all of The West Wing. I do like The West Wing a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know where you can watch The West Wing now.
I know somebody else just bought the license to it, and I'm pretty sure it's Netflix. I'm pretty sure you can watch the West Wing on Netflix. But
Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, I don't know how we forgot fucking Jeff Daniels' name.
Yeah, he's been in so much good stuff.
Many good stuff.
Why am I blanking?
And that's the thing is he disappears in this movie too. Like you're like, hey, it's Jeff Daniels, but he disappears in this. You know, like everybody's gone in the role. Like I was praising Michael Fassbender, but the number one stakeout from this movie is Seth fucking Rogen. Like Seth Rogen.
You were saying it while we were watching. You were surprised. By,
I was so surprised
that
because
Seth Rogen fucking brought it in this one.
Yeah, like this is. And I hate to say this because I'm sure he hates being compared all the time, but this is his Jonah Hill and Fastball moment, is that movie. Because Moneyball. Sorry, yeah, I said Fastball. But, like, it's literally him standing above even the main actor.
Aaron Sorkin wrote Moneyball, too.
Fucking Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up.
Funny I brought that up. He's so fantastic in this movie. Instantly, I'm like, that's Steve Woz, you know, like, and it's like, and it's funny because
Wozniak.
As much as I'm not a big fan of Steve Jobs, I do know who Woz is, you know, like, and I know all that history and everything.
Yeah, most people know Steve Wozniak,
and it was wild to like see this, you know, like, and I gotta give it to Seth Rogen. He makes you feel for him immediately, and usually for Seth Rogen, you're like, hey, look, it's Seth Rogen, like that's the problem with Seth Rogen is you throw him in a movie and you're like, look, Seth Rogen's
here. He's been criticized many times for kind of just playing like the same dude in almost every role.
Disappears.
And here's the thing, like I like Seth Rogen, but I do think he falls into like that same typecasting all the time. And it's one of those things where, like, I feel like you have potential. And when you see movies like this, you're just like, yeah, you can be more than just, you know, the schlubby guy in comedies. You know what I mean? Yeah, and he really kills it. I think he brings the right intensity. He's able to really make you feel those scenes where he's fighting with Steve. You know, like, it is really well done. And I got to give it up to him for that. Because I feel like a lot of people are always just like, Seth Rogen's stoner comedy, and that's what he wants, but also at the same time, this is really his Jonah Hill moment. This is
with this, he could step into many other things, but of course he still hasn't. But like, he could do it. Like, if you put him on a dramatic role, I'd be like, yeah, sure. You know,
I remember in interviews he was talking about how it was interesting for him to play a different role back when the movie was first coming out and being advertised, and he was doing interviews for it. And this was before I even finally got to watch the movie. But he was talking about like, oh yeah, it was good, it was refreshing, it felt relaxed. It's just like, you really got to get the practice in. You really got to know like the dialogue, because like those Aaron Sorkin scripts don't play around.
No, they don't. They're so well done, and I got to give it to you got to give it to the actors, because they really sell these scripts. You know, these scripts could be almost cheesy if they weren't played right, and they do, and they just nail it.
You can tell Aaron Sorkin was a playwright before he became a screenwriter.
Yeah, exactly. Because everyone comes into a room and then has the conversation in the room. You know, as much as Steve Jobs is walking around and talking to people, a lot of it is like, and we are on a stage and we have stopped and moving and we are going to have a whole scene in this room. You know,
I mean, that's more or less A Few Good Men. A Few Good Men is actually based on the play.
Yes,
which
yes. Which it makes a ton of sense. And I think it's really the great thing about a playwright coming to a screen is that he understands what is effective on stage will not always play on screen.
Correct.
And what's great about Aaron Sorkin is he seems to understand that and seems to be able to play with that aspect a little bit more, and it seems to stand out, you know, like...
And he seems to be really fascinated about stories with men in power.
Yeah.
Like, he seems to really be fascinated by, like, that sort of character study.
Yeah, because, I mean, okay, so we've been talking a lot about Steve Jobs, but if we look at The Social Network, now, Social Network, I liked it. I liked it when I saw it. I'm a David Fincher fan, but, like... I don't know. Maybe it's the Justin Timberlake that killed. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's so unlikable. You know, at least with Steve Jobs, he's trying to be better, but like Zuckerberg's he's just about zucking people. You know, he's like yeah.
And I think zucked. And I think there's more peaks and valleys in Steve Jobs, where like Zuckerberg, in the way he's portrayed in The Social Network, is sort of above everyone else, and it's unrelenting. Whereas in Steve Jobs, someone gets like a quick oneer in, and he has like Joanna there to bounce off of him. Like they're more on like even ground.
Yes, exactly. I really think that that's what shows off Aaron Sorkin's great ability is that he didn't just create a same movie again. You know, like he didn't just do Steve Jobs as this like unlikable shithead like he did for Social Network.
Yeah, my thing about The Social Network is that for as good as it is, like it is a really well written and well directed version of a very standard type of biopic.
Yes, but yeah, exactly. I would say that it's very standard, but that's why it stands out is that like it's able to be great.
It's like the framework itself is very straightforward, but it's executed to the nth degree.
I think the whole movie comes down to the almost opening lines where he's having a discussion with the girlfriend and she's breaking up with him, and she's like, years from now, you'll be thinking, oh, she broke up with me because I'm a nerd, and I want you to know it's not because of that, it's because you're an asshole. Yeah. And that pretty much sums up the entirety of the movie, you know, like, is that like Mark Zuckerberg deep down believes he might be a good guy, but he's not, you know, like it's like is deep down it's like, what are his motivations, you know, like and really they're not very good, you know, like is what you learn from this. And that's what I think is so effective about The Social Network. It's giving you this character, and instead of like The Greatest Showman where they're like, forget about the real person, he's great. They like
oh yeah, P.T. Barnum was great.
Yeah, exactly. Like The Greatest Showman takes like a piece of shit person, and then they made him like this great father figure who really just wants to put on a show for everybody. And you're like, what? I like The Social Network for being like, hey, Zuckerberg's kind of an asshole, and we're going to portray him as an asshole, which is why I don't think people love The Social Network as much as some movies, is because it's hard. I love a character you're not supposed to like, but it's hard for general audiences to be like, but I couldn't get behind this character. And you're like, you don't have to be behind everybody.
Oh my God.
You know,
that's such like a normie pet peeve of mine that I can't stand. We're just like, how am I supposed to enjoy this movie when the character is unlikable?
You're like,
how am I supposed to enjoy something if I'm being challenged by it? Why did the movie stop thinking for me, Frank?
Exactly. And you got to give it to Social Network. It does not think for you.
Yeah.
If you give it to it, it moves fast. It wants to show these real life moments without having to be like, and then this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You know,
and
like
as far as like contrast is concerned, because I had mentioned like standard framework executed to the nth degree.
Yeah.
The reason I lean more towards Steve Jobs is because it has that execution to the nth degree, and the structure is more unique.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think the dialogue is just as whip sharp in Social Network. Absolutely. Like, no question. I just think maybe the Steve Jobs has a more emotional weight behind those whip sharp dialogues, and that's maybe why I feel them more, you know, like, is that like, and that's it's almost on purpose, you know, like, is that like, you're not supposed to like Steve Jobs here, but you are supposed to root for him, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, like,
in a way, in the same way that you would do for like an anti-hero in like some other project. It's just like, well, you shouldn't root for him, but you kind of do, even if you don't admit it.
And he's not exactly a bad dude, you know, like he is, he does, I don't know, what's the best way to, they said it in the movie, why do you want people to not like you? You know, like,
it's just like, he's like, I'm indifferent to whether people like me.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where like, he's ambitious and he wants what he wants.
A closed system.
Yeah. End to end.
End to end. It's wild. Like, that they were able to get these, like, that's the crazy thing about Aaron Sorkin is you're able to feel these feelings about characters that are real, but he's basically making them up, you know, like, it's like, you know, like,
because of course it's going to be creative liberties, which does sort of rub people the wrong way. But to be honest, if you look at other offenders for biopics and stuff like that, like you mentioned, The Greatest Showman, there's bigger fish to fry, you know what I mean? But my favorite type of biopics, whether accurate or not, tend to be the ones that aren't just so overly like celebratory.
Yeah.
I want to see that sort of like that moral ambiguity.
Yeah,
because people are people and people are flawed.
Yeah. It's so funny we brought up Moneyball because it's right in between The Social Network and Steve Jobs here. Because and it's so funny because I would say The Social Network is kind of a bleak outlook movie, you know, like, and so is A Few Good Men. Like, they end with being like, yeah, shit's fucked, right? System's really fucked up. Like, you know, like, and that's kind of what the entire thing is that the system's fucked up. And then you have a movie like Moneyball, which is super hopeful. Like, you know, like, and I know it's based off a book, so like, yes, it has to go in a different direction than that. But like, it's a hopeful movie. It's a movie being like, yeah, I can change the way we play baseball, you know? Like,
maybe that like optimism carried over
to
the
Steve
next one.
Jobs.
Because of Steve Jobs, you sort of have like the compromise.
Yeah, it really is. It really is the compromise. And it's funny because he hasn't done many movies past that. We got Molly's Game in 2017, and then we have this year, The Trial of the Chicago 7, which I don't even know if that's out yet.
Well, then again, when he's like, I'd imagine like
October 16th.
The Newsroom kept him busy when he's like working on the show. That definitely takes up more of his time.
Exactly. I mean, it's only 12 episodes, right? So it's only a one season show. It's a mini series. No, there's 3 seasons. Oh, I didn't know that. Fuck. I didn't know that.
We're gonna binge them all.
But they are it is very short, like about 10 episodes a season. But yeah, I mean, I'm after watching Steve Jobs, I'm absolutely down for watching Newsroom. I'm like, okay, yep, sure.
Gotta find out where The West Wing is at to see if you can watch that.
Yeah,
I can't remember if it was on Netflix or not. It's been a bit.
I want to say it's something like that. No. Yeah, because somebody was vying for that. Now that they've lost, Netflix is going to lose The Office and then Friends. You know, like they're looking for their
was lost at least for one of those.
So Friends is going to HBO Max, which cracks me up, but they're going to do their Friends special. They're going to do their, like, big reunion thing, and you're like, cool.
I mean, fine. Like, I got my Parks and Rec special, so the universe balances itself out.
And then I think NBC's being real dumb with thinking that people will jump on their service now that they have The Office. Like, I think what's going to happen is that everyone's going to go to the high seas for the Office. They're just going to go take to the internet. And because this is like, as much as people love The Office, I can see a lot of people being like, fuck you, I'm not paying $9 a month to watch The Office, you know? Like, even though they do already.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're already paying more than that to watch The Office.
They should.
At least
I don't think they will.
At least some people who we know who shall remain nameless.
But the sorry, we're getting off track. The West Wing being on Netflix had nothing to do with any of this. Yeah. But I really was taken aback by how good Steve Jobs was. Mm-hmm. I really do think that as A Few Good Men will live down as a classic, and so will Social Network. It seriously is one of those weird films that has endured. Like, which is why we're talking about it here. Is that like out of the Aaron Sorkin movies, these are the two that are like standing above and are very similar. Mm-hmm. You know, like. And it really, it's weird that the Social Network has lived as long as it has.
That's what surprised me about it, because I just kind of saw, David Fincher or not, Aaron Sorkin or not. I was just like, really, the Facebook movie?
Yeah.
Like, it's sad to say, but it's just like, really, the Facebook movie? And I hadn't seen it. It was actually Donald.
Yeah.
from school.
That's funny.
Who had been like, he's like, what the hell do you mean you haven't seen this? Go home and watch the Social Network. And I'm like, okay, Don.
Yeah, okay.
And I did, and I'm just like, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was good. And it is. That's it. Social Network is very good. I'm like, it's hard because I'm kind of blown away by Steve Jobs at the moment, so I'm not as praising of the Social Network, but it is good. Mm-hmm. Don't take my downward tone at it as it being bad. Yeah. Social Network is a good movie. I give it to Jesse Eisenberg. Same as Michael Fassbender here. They both just like disappear into their roles. Like even more Jesse Eisenberg here. Like this is I feel like the Social Network is his standout role. Like
it really is. Like
he's in a lot of movies. He's in a lot of great movies, and he's good in movies.
And under like a good director, he can be very, very good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And sometimes he's Lex Luthor instead.
Sometimes he's Lex Luthor.
But to be honest, if he played Lex Luthor the same way he played Zuckerberg,
I would have, yeah.
I think that would have been a much more interesting version of Lex Luthor. I could have bought that, because I imagine that's part of the reason that they cast him to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. They
were
like,
well,
Zuckerberg.
All right, if we're going to do Lex Luthor, we're going to sort of do the modern kind of Zuckerberg type thing, but for Lex Luthor. So why didn't you have him actually have some like weight and presence and like intimidation as opposed to hamming it up like he is?
Yeah. Oh Lord,
it's so weird.
It's so weird. And I really, he does disappear in that role. He's.
It's funny that we bring this up, because I had made the joke while we were watching Steve Jobs that we should get Michael Fassbender to play Lex Luthor.
It's true though. He is. I don't know, like I get it. You see Jesse Eisenberg and you're like, young, uncupping actor, he should be Lex Luthor. But after seeing Steve Jobs, I would have been like, yeah, that man's fucking Lex Luthor.
Just shave his head and just do what you did here, just again.
Again. Like he's like scary in the Lex Luthor way, where it's like he could tear you apart, you know, like, but not in a physical way, like he financial ruin sort of way.
He can make a phone call and your whole life is ruined.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's definitely the parts you're not supposed to like Steve Jobs about, you know, like that he's actually threatening people, and you're kind of like, geez, dude, what the fuck? You know, like, you're supposed to be the head of Apple, and you're like out here being like, think different or I'll fuck you. Like, you know, like, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, and I haven't heard anything to really discredit that as far as accuracy is concerned.
I've heard that is exactly on
the most I heard is just like, he wasn't that mean. That's about the most I've heard. So I'm just like, okay, so that's like the extent.
Yeah, you're like, so that's it.
So just marginal, just like, because that's still scary.
And it's funny because if you're comparing these two movies, Zuckerberg is really hard to work with also. Same as Steve Jobs. They are both just very hard to work with, but in different ways. Zuckerberg's character in the movie Social Network doesn't want to work with anybody because he thinks he's the smartest in the room.
Yeah.
And then it's even said in the dialogue of Steve Jobs, he's playing the orchestra. He's definitely he thinks he's the smartest in the room, but he is making sure that all the other truly smarter people than him are under his wing, you know?
Yeah. Just that line hits like a truck. It's
Yeah.
just like, what do you do? Because that's also often been a criticism of like Steve Jobs. It's just like, doesn't he just kind of stand back and let everyone else do the work for him?
Yeah.
So just that line of just like, I play the orchestra. And he's like, you're the best player. You sit right there in your row. Just like right there where you belong.
Yeah. You're just like,
I'm up here, you're down there.
Jeez.
And you're like, holy shit.
And I love that scene because I love that bit because he had just told him, Steve Woz just tells Steve Jobs that like I am not I'm not just somebody, you know. I know you. Like we are not different, you know. Like you are not above me, you know.
Yeah.
Like and then Steve Jobs like cements it. That he is above him. He's like, no, you may think that, but that's not true to me, you know. Like, and you're just like, damn, Steve, like,
So cutting.
And I think if I'm gonna sum up my like favorite part of the Steve Jobs movie that really stuck out to me dialogue wise was a lot of movies have these sort of like anti-heroes, and when they try to get to the root of what their problem is, they can cop out. You know, like they can just be like, it doesn't feel like it actually gets to the real root of what it is. And here they simplify it with one line, and I was so like, the fuck, Andy Sorkin, when he did it. He goes, it's at the end with his daughter and Lisa, and his daughters ask him why you have not said I'm your daughter for like literally my entire life. And he says, I was made wrong.
Yeah, he says, I'm poorly made.
I'm poorly made, which is so like, it's like, it's so simple and mind blowing, and also connects back to who Steve Jobs is and the way he talks to other people. You're like, damn, Andy Sorkin, what the fuck? Like, it really works so well. So well done. And it's so funny because so many other people could have used that line and it wouldn't have worked. Like, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked.
I mean, it even seems like the type of line that reading it on the page, you're just like, I don't know about that one. But that's definitely one that relies on a performance to like really carry it.
Yeah, and he does it. That was one of those lines that I was like, dang. like it was just like, because like a lot of biopics try to delve into what's wrong with a guy, and it's funny to hear a guy respond with what's wrong with them, you know, like and how like what he actually thinks of himself, because like the whole movie, that's another important part of it, because the whole movie's about how he's presented to other people and how he wants to be presented to other people. And then when he actually has to take a reflection on himself, he's like, I'm poorly made, you know, like he takes a moment to be like, shit. Like, not very well made.
I would say movies like this, and going back to like the Before trilogy and even Social Network as well, like, to be honest, these are the type of films that should be taught as far as like writing dialogue is concerned.
Absolutely, no question.
It's just like, come on.
Like
the argument in Before Midnight alone should be a seminar.
and the same here. I feel like Steve Jobs is a fantastic example of not only how to write dialogue, but how to write dialogue that bounces off of each other, you know, like, because a lot of these sequences aren't like a lot of, you know, when you think of a great screenplay, you think of a monologue or something like that somebody says and you're like, wow, that was really fucking good. But here it's all like literally them talking to each other that really sticks out to you, you know, like it's really the interactions between each other that really stand out.
There's something almost like Shakespearean about it, to use more like a cliche descriptor, but it is fairly accurate. I know Sorkin describes his writing like, he's admitted like dialogue is his favorite thing. Yeah. And he says to him, it's like writing music. Like there's peaks and valleys and it all has to come together.
Yeah. And that's I think what really works here is that this all comes together and it flows, you know, like you said, any good music flows, and this flows. Like I said, it's 2 hours long. Did not feel like 2 hours because it is just flowing.
Yeah.
Not only are you time constraint, but you feel like it's just happening, you know, like not only are you being like, well, you got 8 minutes to do this, but you're in the story and it's happening and it's just going.
And despite only being like 3 specific pieces of the life, you felt and you feel like you've been for them for a lot longer than
you've seen it all.
It accomplishes so much with like so little as far as the framework is concerned. Like you said, whereas other movies would be like telegraphed from beginning to end, and you almost feel like this gets so much more done with less.
With so much less. I have to give it to Danny Boyle, too. I feel like he, as much as Fincher brings his always mood and tone, Boyle brings his style.
Yeah.
Like as much as he's doing a very stripped down biopic, he still brings
and
Danny Boyle to it, you know?
I don't think the film would have been as sort of fun, because Steve Jobs is just fun to watch.
It is.
I don't think it would have been as fun with Fincher.
No, because Fincher doesn't like fun.
Because it could have been
fun.
Easy thing of just like, I worked with Fincher already. The Social Network worked out. Why don't you come do this one too?
Yeah, I'm sure it would have. But I think that this is so right because, first off, Danny Boyle also loves that realness. You know, like he really does love that. But then he likes to bring in his... I think it's always funny. He always brings in a Dutch angle occasionally. And it's not... Danny Boyle doesn't use the Dutch angle to be like, something's wrong. He's like something's weird. You know?
Like superimposed effects and stuff like that. Like when they're just standing in the hallway talking and you see like the projection of like the rocket like on the wall.
I love that. I mean, of course it reminds you of Trainspotting and everything like that. But it's Danny Boyle showing himself, you know, because it's not those he's able to show cinema in the way that it truly is. Not all like, and that sounds so you know, like, but is that Fincher is showing you what's on screen as it happens. Boyle is showing you on screen the best interpretive way of showing this scene. You know, like that's the reason why he does the stuff on the backgrounds and the superimposing, is because not only is it important to see the visuals of them talking, but to also understand the feelings that they are talking about.
Exactly.
And he's able to visually storytell almost better than Fincher, because he's not reliant on it being realistic. He wants it to be more about how these characters are feeling and what's happening. I think one of the very important things about this is that a lot of the important shots are people looking at Steve. Like it's not from Steve's point of view or something. It's people looking at Steve doing something, you know, which is important. It's something how Steve Jobs also views his life from other people's perspectives than his own.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important when he gets the reviews before the third conference that they don't want to give it to him because he's so reliant on the outworld world and what they see in him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where like Joanna keeps trying to get it away, but he ends up getting it anyway.
And it's
and she's always just like, manage your expectations, relax, don't let it get to you because it will get to you.
And that's what's great about it, is that Danny Boyle's able to show how it gets to him and how it like seems to get underneath his skin, and they accomplish that with a lot of sequences where Steve Jobs is looking at a mirror and he's like looking at himself and like thinking a little bit. And I know that sounds very like Johnny Cash. He's got to think about all the things he's thought about before he goes on stage, you know, walk the line. But like, it's just like, this is so much better in that aspect than he's got to think about all the bad things he's done before he gets on stage.
I can only think of like Walk Hard.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm trying to reference Walk the Line, but I'm obviously referencing Walk Hard.
Walk Hard has like ruined the musical, the musician biopic for me. It has just pulled back the skin. It has revealed itself.
I know. Seriously.
Like I could see the code. I could see the Matrix coding. Oh man, Dewitt Cox needs to think about his entire life before he plays. You want to talk about? Maybe we should do an episode on that, because Walk Hard is an underrated.
Yeah, it's
movie.
Underrated. It's fucking great.
Yeah.
I fucking love that movie. But besides the point, this has nothing to do with that. Is that they're able to do that like kind of trope and do it so well here. I really enjoy Steve Jobs. I say if you haven't seen it, fucking go see it. I don't think there's any, like, Deshaun's been pushing me forever, and I will say that now that I've seen it, I want to see it again, and I recommend it to everybody.
And it pretty much follows the same pattern. Like, this happens every time I try to get someone to watch it. It's just like, it's pulling teeth, but then when I actually get them to sit down and do it, you're just like, yeah, that was really good.
That was really good.
Every time, as soon as they even open, we're just like, I don't care about Steve Jobs. You don't need to care about Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
I promise you.
Yeah, and that's what I would say is that you do not have to care about Steve Jobs. That is not the point of this. Like, the point of this is that there's these important moments in history, and there's this man behind it, and maybe we don't know enough about that dude.
Yeah, it's actually the best possible philosophy as far as, like, studio mentality of just, like, it has to appeal to a mass audience.
Yeah.
This is the way to do it in an organic way.
Exactly. Without being... stupid. You know, like
talking down.
Yes, exactly. And that's really it, is that a lot of studios will be like, here's his life story. Here it is, in your face, shove it in your mouth, you know, like, instead of being like, here's Steve Jobs, and let it fly, you know, like, and I really enjoy this. This is definitely, Steve Jobs now, the movie is now up there on my best biopics list. I would say it's definitely up, like, if not the best, one of the best, because it was astounding.
Again, with those movies that I like to put on, and it's just like, you know what, I need to write something. Let me put something on to show me how it's fucking done as far as, like, writing dialogue is concerned.
Man. And that's really it, is if you are a big dialogue fan, that you can't miss this movie. You just can't. It is some of the best dialogue. If you saw A Few Good Men and were like, damn, that's some good dialogue, this is you will love this. Like, and it's just, I think this is a great movie. That sounds stupid, but, like, a movie buff will love this movie no matter what. It's got a great director, great actor, great dialogue, great presentation, great directing. This is an astounding movie. I really am I'm quite taken.
I told you.
Yeah, no, but I'm taken, you know, like, it sounds stupid, but it's like, I really am. As much as good as The Social Network is, and it is good, I own it on Blu-ray. There's a reason why I own it on Blu-ray. It is a good movie, but it's almost, like you said, it's almost like somebody's been hiding this Steve Jobs movie from me, and I didn't know it was good, you know, like, and hopefully you guys have listened to this podcast and been like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to that fucking movie now. I'm going to watch that movie. So thank you guys for tuning. Well, is there anything else you want to put in about this movie before we finish?
No, I think I've summed it up pretty well.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please subscribe, follow, like, whatever. We're
everywhere.
We're everywhere. Please support us, because
Engage.
that's how we keep doing this, is we love to engage with you, and if you engage back, that's fucking awesome. Yep. So again, I'm Frank on Twitter, and you're Mod Karaika.
Yep.
And you can check out our Facebook page, and basically please tell us how you feel about Steve Jobs. If you thought it was a boring dialogue-filled movie, please talk to us, and we'll tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
And
we'll meet you in a 7-Eleven parking lot.
But thank you guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
See you next time.
Adios.